All right, guys. So today I'm going to be talking about the number one nutritional component that you cannot overlook if you're dealing with an injury and trying to recover fully. Okay. And that nutritional component is protein. All right. So a lot of times, if somebody's not getting the protein ingestion that they need, their muscles aren't recovering properly. Okay. So what protein does is when we go and work out, what we're doing is we're breaking down the muscle. All right. And then over the next course of the few days, our body is repairing itself, and it repairs itself through the protein that we ingest. And when it repairs itself, the body actually over repairs itself. And that's how we become stronger and our muscles become stronger, okay? Bigger and stronger. And so if we're not getting that protein ingestion and we continue to work out and continue to break down muscle that was broken down from the last workout, that's how it leads to injuries. Okay. All right. And so I just dealing with, so to show you how important this is and how an inadequate protein ingestion can lead to injuries is I was working, a patient came in and I asked them like, hey, has your exercise routine changed? Are you doing any different exercises? Are you running more? Are you doing lifting heavier? Or walk me through on what you're doing differently with regards to your strength training or your workout regimen. And I'm like, nothing. I haven't changed anything. And they came in for, well, backtrack, they came in for a muscle strain. They strained their muscle pretty significantly. It wasn't a tear or anything, but it was causing pretty significant pain to the extent that they weren't able to work out the way that they wanted to. Anyways, I asked about, okay, well, sleep's important. In my back home, I'm like, I know sleep's important for recovery. I'm like, well, have you started like a new job, or are you more stressed out? And you're not getting your sleep? Walk me through that. Like, no, jobs stay the same, stress levels are the same. I'm sleeping the exact same. And so what I did next was turn to nutrition and like ask them, what has anything changed with their nutrition or anything like that? And like, yeah, it's actually switched to, I believe it was a vegetarian diet or it was a vegan diet. It was a vegan diet. And so what they did is, and then I asked them like, okay, that's fine, but how's your protein ingestion? And they're like, well, I haven't really been keeping track of that. And I'm like, okay, well, what is your diet like before that? And like, there's a decent amount of meat consumption. And like, okay, so you removed all the meat consumption because you're on the vegan diet. Like, okay, all right. So how are you supplementing the loss of the protein ingestion because you're not consuming meat? What are you using to replace that? And like, well, I haven't really been making a focused or conscious effort on that. Just been eating vegetables and stuff like that. And so that's a big problem. First of all, it's a big problem. It's a problem I see a lot of people do when they switch to a vegan or vegetarian diet. There's nothing wrong with a vegan or vegetarian diet. You just got to make sure that you don't completely neglect protein consumption, okay? Because your body needs that to repair itself, okay? And there's a lot of other ways to get protein consumption outside of meat or anything like that, okay? And so what happened is most of the session, I did give her some corrective exercises and stretches and stuff like that's going to help with the muscle strain. But if that's all I did and we didn't do anything with regards to changing her nutritional components of protein ingestion, it would have been a really long rehab process, and the injuries would have kept popping up. So we spent probably over 3/4 of that session going over strategies on how she can increase her protein consumption now that she's not consuming meat. All right. And her recovery process was great. Few weeks, she was feeling so much better. Okay. And she was able to train more heavily as well. Because her workouts were slowing down because her body wasn't repairing itself like it needed to. Okay. So that's how important and how just not getting enough protein consumption can lead to injuries. Okay. Second of all, a lot of times when people are trying to lose weight, one strategy is to decrease how much calories you're consuming or creating a caloric deficit. Okay. And so what people do is they just decrease their calories across the board. Okay. And a lot of times, sometimes they'll even start with like protein consumption. They'll decrease like meat that they're eating, or they'll just decrease the levels altogether equally between carbs, fats, and proteins just across the board. Well, the first thing, if you're trying to lose weight, you should be cutting carbs and fats before protein. Okay, you want to try and keep the protein levels where they need to be. Okay, and so this can lead to injuries if they're trying to bring all those macronutrients. Macronutrients are carbs, fats, and proteins. So they try and decrease those levels across the board, and it leads to injuries. Okay, and if somebody's trying to lose like fat mass, one of the best ways to lose fat is by building muscle. Muscle burns fat. It uses fat for energy, okay? And so by getting stronger and building your muscles up, it's gonna increase how much fat that you're burning as well. However, you can't build muscle mass if you're not getting the protein consumption that you need, okay? So actually increasing and maintaining the levels of protein that you need, even though you're trying to decrease your calories, will help your efforts in decreasing your fat mass and losing weight that way. Okay. So another question I get is like, I'm having a hard time with getting enough protein. It's because protein a lot of time when you're consuming meat, it's pretty filling. Okay, and people are like, I just can't stomach eating this much meat or consuming this much protein. I'm tired of eating chicken. I'm tired of eating salmon. I'm tired of eating turkey burgers. What's another way to get protein consumption? Okay, so ideally, the first thing I'm going to answer in just a second, but mainly ideal thing is you get your protein from natural resources. Okay, like chicken, like salmon, like turkey burgers, stuff like that. Or tofu, if you're doing like vegan diet, you can only eat so much tofu, so you got to supplement from other strategies there too. But you can supplement with protein shakes or protein bars. It's not as ideal as it is if you were just getting that through natural resources. However, it's better to get that through protein shakes or protein bars than not getting the protein at all. Okay, again, eat as much and consume as much protein from natural resources as you can. But if you can't quite meet the protein consumption that you need, then you can supplement with protein shakes or protein bars. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. You just don't you don't want to be on the other end of the spectrum where you're just consuming nothing protein shakes and protein bars and a little bit of other natural resources. That's not the way to go about it, and I see a lot of people do that. Okay, so let's try and stay away from that. All right. I want to talk about how important, if you're a patient or if you're dealing with, or if you're trying to overcome an injury yourself, and just how important protein consumption is too. Okay, so again, really recovery. If you're like, when you come in, again, all physical therapy is different, but when you come and see us, most of the physical therapy strategies that we utilize is based on improving strength and removing any imbalances throughout the body, or any weaknesses or abnormalities there, okay? Because that's what's really solving the root issues. By most of the time, people just have muscle imbalances where they're way too strong, they're way too weak in this area compared to this other area. And so we need to level those things up. So we do that through strength training and building strength that way as well. And so rehab is really, there's a spectrum. Okay, we got rehab here, and we've got like people that are doing bodybuilding on this other end of the spectrum. Okay, it's just rehab is just on the lower end of that spectrum. We're still just like bodybuilders or people that are doing strength training, powerlifting, CrossFit, and they're trying to build strength and muscle mass. We're doing the exact same thing and trying to do the exact same thing on the rehab spectrum. So you see like bodybuilders and people that are trying to gain strength, they have their protein consumption is off the charts or in a good range, okay? Because they need that to build muscle. We need that for rehab too. We're just on the lower end of the spectrum because we're still trying to build strength and build muscle mass, and we can't do that without protein consumption. Okay, so I made this mistake earlier on in my career. It's one of the first years I started as a physical therapist, and in school we didn't get a whole lot of nutrition background. Okay, so my thing was, okay, we're gonna focus on the physical aspects of things when it comes to PT, building strength, decreasing tightness, stuff like that. And so I wasn't as well-rounded when I first started out. And so I wasn't asking a whole lot of questions about like sleep and nutrition. So this patient came in and I did the evaluation, and I just focused on what a lot of physical therapists still do, even with a lot of experiences. They just focus on strength, range of motion, stuff like that. And so she was very significantly, she was weak. She didn't have a whole lot of muscle mass or anything like that. And most of the issues that she was dealing with was because of a loss of strength and not having the strength to maintain stability of different joints and different structures. And so I'm like, okay, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna strengthen. I'm gonna give you a bunch of strengthening exercise. She really didn't need a whole lot of stretches or anything like that. All she needed to do was build strength. And so it was a very straightforward diagnosis. There wasn't anything crazy that stood out or any reason why she shouldn't progress naturally. Okay, because the diagnosis I've seen that I had seen countless times through physical therapy school and even before, early on in my career, and whatnot too. But we went through about 4 or 5 visits, and she was not making significant progress. She asked her she's like, well, I feel about 5 to 10% better. Well, usually by 5 visits, patients are feeling over 50% better, if not. Sometimes patients are completely out of pain after 3 visits. And so this was very abnormal, just to have a patient that had a very straightforward diagnosis and issue not progress like I anticipated because she wasn't building strength. So what I did is I started thinking about, well, what are some other components why wouldn't she be building strength or anything like that? And turned it to, again, ask her questions about sleep, started diving into sleep and nutrition. And she was vegan. She had recently she had been doing a vegan diet for about 6 months, and she was getting essentially zero protein. And so because she wasn't consuming the protein that she needed, her recovery process was so slow because we weren't getting those building blocks from the protein to repair the body and repair the muscles to become stronger. And so again, we focused on the next visit, that visit and the following visit, we focused on strategies to get her protein consumption up where it needed to be. After we did that, it was smooth sailing. She progressed just as what I thought she would do originally. Okay, I had just made the assumption that nutrition wasn't playing a big factor into things. After we fixed the protein consumption, I kept her on the same path of strength and exercise and all that. The only thing we changed significantly was the nutrition component and making sure she got her protein up. Okay, so if you're dealing with an injury, you must be getting enough protein, especially if the underlying issue is a lack of strength or stability in a certain area. Okay, so hopefully this kind of shows you guys just how important protein consumption is and how big nutrition plays a factor into the recovery process and overcoming an injury. All right, so hopefully this is helpful. If you guys have questions, just let me know.